Thank you, everybody. We're very excited you're here. Appreciate your time. We're here to talk about the Water Development Board Groundwater Research Science and Data Collection Grants. We want to take this time to introduce us to you if you don't know much about us and talk about how we've partnered with other districts so far for the last 10 years and how we can partner with you perhaps for achieving better, smarter groundwater monitoring. We're trying to save some time for questions at the end. I'm Chuck Dunning, 9 years now with Wellntel, following a career with the USGS. And Marion Singer is co-founder and CEO.
The thing that's super exciting for us, just to kick this all off, is at least in our work with the Texas groundwater conservation districts in the last 9, 10 years, as Chuck was talking about, this feels like a once in a lifetime opportunity to get to take advantage of these Texas Water Development Board grants, specifically around groundwater monitoring. There is a 2-year period that's due in March this year, and then it sounds like there'll be another tranche of grants in another couple of years, which would be really awesome and so helpful. So we're excited here to just talk about this as an opportunity for you all. The goals, you probably know this, the goals for Category 2, which is the one that we are going to focus on, is all about effective groundwater resource management and planning, understanding of local groundwater conditions, and then really enhancing the collection, the quality, and the availability, which is also kind of a good word for the management and the sharing of groundwater data. And that's right where we sit. There are, I think, 11 Category 2 priorities that are listed in the grant, and I understand that is not an exhaustive list. So there's a lot more that can fit under that groundwater data management and collection. We're going to focus on 4 of these priorities, and they're really in 2 groups. One around just basic data collection, groundwater systems, groundwater level monitoring. So the monitoring, getting more data points, more monitoring locations for you. And then the second focus for us is around database management, enhancement, and dissemination, which is a good word for also saying the sharing of data with boards, with the public as you need to, all the ideas around management and then sharing. So those will be our 2 focuses for today. Focusing specifically on groundwater level monitoring and that expansion, getting more data points. There are a couple options, a couple paths for you to go down. One is there are 15,000 state and conservation district monitoring wells, and many of them could have telemetry added to them to create new real-time monitoring points. Not a new location, but a new density of data that gives you more information. Certainly, there is the opportunity to drill new wells and create new monitoring locations. And then finally, there is also an opportunity to leverage what is usually a hidden asset. There's probably over 1 million, this says 800,000, but there's probably over 1 million production wells, domestic wells, business wells, ag wells, small to mid-sized water utility wells that are out there and could be, with the right technology, converted into another groundwater monitoring, real-time groundwater monitoring location, providing another data point, and then also a dense data record to go along with it. So looking at technologies, I'm going to turn it on over to Chuck. If you're not familiar with us, we're going to do a little bit of an introduction to how our sensor works and how it's really designed for that second category of leveraging those hidden assets.
Yeah, thank you, Marion. So yes, the real beauty of what we do is to focus on these available wells, these production wells, pumping wells, submersible pump wells. And in fact, with the districts that we work across Texas, I would say that probably 95% of the wells that we are on with these districts are actively pumping wells. So it's really them taking advantage of this asset of existing wells and existing locations, saving money, more quickly getting data flowing. So our sensor was designed specifically to turn monitoring and production wells into real-time monitoring points. And this is just a schematic of the well. I'm sorry, of the sensor sitting on a typical well. It's acoustic. The signal that collects the data for depth to water is acoustic, so it doesn't touch water. It doesn't touch water because the sensor only hangs about 3 to 5 inches below the bottom of the well seal. Little to no wellhead modification. Typically, it installs on a port that's already on the well seal. It's usually typically less than an hour or an hour to install. Of course, every well has its own personality, and there can be wells that might have an issue, but typically less than an hour. USGS tested to 1/10 of a foot accuracy, and the telemetry is enabled either by radio or cellular telemetry. So here's photos of the sensor in the field. The sensor is actually kind of hidden right here. This is a kind of a out in the boonies location. This is actually just a monitoring point, an abandoned well casing. The cellular components are in here, and of course this is solar powered, so that's a monitoring point. Here's a clearer picture of the sensor in an agricultural setting for a supply well out in the boonies. Here's a picture of this is also a Texas well. This is North Texas. It's a domestic well, so this one is using the radio technology for the telemetry in a nearby residence. So that's what the sensor looks like in the field. As you can see, it's a pretty straightforward, simple installation on these different wellheads. So one of the really exciting things I think about our system is that as part of the registration of these wells, once they're installed, so you install the wells and then you have to register them. As part of that registration process, you're presented with a Google map and you have to locate the well. And so by doing that, you establish the lat and the long and the elevation for that well as you go through that registration process. And that automatically creates this map-based water management system. So what you need is a time series data set, and it creates that location and that elevation for you. And then you're off and running. You don't need a GIS person expert to create a mapping application for you. You don't need a database expert to work with your data. It's a time series data set, location, and you're set to go. So in this case, if you had 4 wells with data, historical data, you could put them through the management system or through the registration system, and immediately you've got the platform that you need with the data being stored. So it's a very straightforward way for your data to come in and begin to be able to work with it in the dashboard. Also, as part of the sensor, there's a simple current transducer that tags readings as being related to pumping or not related to pumping. And what this allows you to do is to take a data set like this, a hydrograph that's collecting all the data, pumping data and the non-pumping data in a well, and you can filter out all the pumping related data so that if all you're looking for is that the trend of the saturated thickness over time, you're able to filter out the pumping related data so that you're dealing with the data set that you're most used to dealing with. So that takes a pumping well and essentially turns it into the monitoring kind of data that you're used to. So any sensor data can be stored in the analytics dashboard and made ready for analysis and sharing. So we say any time series data, and particularly here, the most important thing is any of your historical data. So if you've got, and I'll show you an example of this in just a moment, if you've got 40 years of data that you've been collecting, you don't want to use that. That's the context for what you're going to be looking at going forward as you expand, maybe make this a real-time site. So any historical data that you have is very easily brought into the dashboard and the database for going forward. And of course, other ways to bring in any other time series data. And the whole platform, the whole approach here is sensor agnostic. So groundwater data, yes. Our systems, acoustic, pressure transducers, manual, all of that. Surface water data, meteorological data, water quality data, and I'll show you an example of that in a moment as well, and flow and pumping data. Plus, our platform has the ability to bring in selected agency data, federal agencies like USGS and NOAA, and also some state data as well, if they're set up, if they're able to do that. So in the dashboard, once you've got your data in there going forward and historical data, it's a really user-friendly dashboard, makes it really easy to compare water levels across the monitoring network. In this case, it's a hydrograph showing here about 5 years of data, 200 feet of depth to groundwater. And what you're seeing here is 3 different wells plotting together. And you're seeing that even though they have a little bit different character, they are all showing a seasonal change over these 5 years to whatever either climate, weather, or perhaps extraction for use. But here, over a pretty short area, you're able to see some pretty important trends that start to ask questions about the aquifer and the resource. And there's also a tab for easily looking at data as contour maps, so you can actually get the spatial. In addition to looking at the 2 dimensionals, you can look at the spatial aspects of your network. So I'm going to show you this. We talked about bringing in different data, and this is a plot that just sort of illustrates that, combining different measurement types for level to increase understanding and improve management. In this case, to your DFC, if that's what this chart was created for. And what it's showing is that there's a first set of data that were just manual data, about 60 years of data starting back in 1960s, just this manual record. And then in 2018, the Wellntel acoustic sensor was added, but the manual measurements continued. You can kind of see them through there. So 2 different types of data for levels were brought in, very easily integrated and visualized. And then going forward, of course, you've got your GAM and maybe some other models that you're working with your consultants. And now you can look at simulations as the next part of this record going forward, and using those simulations to, again, managing your resource in the way that you see. So the point here is integrating data in a way that is really useful for your overall management objective. This was all level data here, but we can also bring in other parameters. In this case, we're going to plot shallow groundwater level, which is the orange value here, depth to groundwater, and we're bringing in the USGS instantaneous stream flow. So this is the ability to bring in that other agency data into the platform, and you can see a high peak in stream flow here, and how the levels in the shallow groundwater aquifer have responded. And another example is, again, Wellntel acoustic groundwater levels here in the orange, and in this case, specific conductivity from a probe that's in the same well. This happens to be along the coast. They're worried about a bit of marine intrusion aspects there. So we'll go from data, which we're talking about here, and how those data can be incorporated and viewed and visualized, and how that helps in the work that you're doing. And now we're going to turn a little bit to data dissemination, or the sharing that Marion said. So the data dissemination or the sharing can be automated as a report. In this case, we have standard or customizable formats, whatever time interval is important. Perhaps this is a report to the board or to a state agency. And so that can be made routine and automated. So that's one aspect for data sharing. Another is that you can share with the public using online websites. And the 2 examples are here. One is an embedded chart. And we've put the link down here that you can go visit. This is the Uvalde County Underground Water Conservation District. On their public website, there's a way to go in and select among the 6 wells that they have Wellntel sensors on. And the public can look at they're looking here at daily high values, and they can look at the data as the water year or the last 365 days, or this chart is showing period of record. So here, a really great way for the public to understand what the district is doing. If you're going to be announcing drought conditions, it's good to have this kind of data in the public's hands, so they can sort of know what they're dealing with, and this announcement isn't coming out from not having data to sort of support that. The other one I want to just show here quickly, this is a Post Oak Savannah Groundwater Conservation District. This is a public website for them. They have so much going on in their district. They've got the Vista Ridge extraction or the export to San Antonio. They've got a lot of things that the public's very, very interested in. So that what they've done is created a public access, not to the data. Well, actually, they do have access to the data, but this particular one is access for the public to look at groupings of wells that the district has decided are representative of what's happening in the Simsboro or the Hooper or other aquifers. And the public can come here, select, and look at the trends over time and look at the data that are supporting that trend. This is a way the district is, informing the public and sort of helping them not have to respond to data calls all the time. Another way for that sharing to be really important and happening. And the last one I'll show here is just that with permission logins, we've talked about sharing within districts, sharing with the public, but I've always felt that it was important for districts to share within their GMA. Here's just an example that in the past, we had helped with Edwards Aquifer Authority and a couple of the districts to work with data together. So if you're in a GMA and you want to be able to share data, the platform is a really beautiful way to do that. So I think I'm going to turn it back to Marion.
What we know is that the grant submissions are due on March 13th. If working with Wellntel is something that you'd be interested in exploring, we'd like to make sure that we get information back to you in as timely a manner as possible. So that really starts with us understanding from you, which questions you want to answer. So, where do you need more data? Meaning, are you going to add some monitoring points on domestic wells? Do you see either adding monitoring wells or adding telemetry to existing monitoring wells? So that's easy equipment information that we can start to put a budget together for you. What kind of data do you need? We've talked with a number of folks who are interested in bringing precipitation data into their instance of Wellntel and into the database, so they can do more of that kind of comparison that Chuck had shown earlier. A lot of the precipitation gauges are online, and some of them use the same provider, and some are different. So what we just need to understand from you is what is that kind of data, and if it is data that is online, if you could let us know who it is that you're working with, then we can do a deep dive on how their APIs work and how we would go about bringing that data, your data, into Wellntel's database for you. Of course, how frequently you want those sensors to be measuring just helps us understand a little bit more about the way that you are thinking about answering your questions. And I think there's a fourth one on here that's just like, is there anything special that you are doing that we might not have run into before? So we've run into it quite a bit, lots of different configurations of wells and in monitoring locations, lots of different configurations of different kinds of data, but we are excited about learning more and tackling any other kind of data as well. So start with that and let us know. And what we will do is within 24 hours, we'll bring back a sample budget to you in a way that you can use it within your grant. This is an example. It's just 5 locations. They all happen to be places where there isn't a local internet connection. So we've included a solar powered base station on here. There's some data services for us and some cellular services for paying for cellular, and we've included an installation and rolled it all up in a budget that includes 2 years of data services, because these are 2-year grants. So we want to make sure that as much of what you are asking for is covered within the grant. So just sort of summing up, what are we, Wellntel, good for? We think what we do well is in this case, help maximize grant dollars by getting more data points more cost effectively by bringing in those existing production wells as potential monitoring points, if that's of interest. Automating data collection with real-time telemetry so that folks, it's less about folks' time in the field and more about data in the cloud. The ability to really bring in any kind of data and centralize it. So it's no longer siloed into, here's our spreadsheets and then here's our real-time data. It's all brought together so that you have one continuous record to look at. And then just reducing sort of spreadsheet jockeying and paperwork by automating reports, by, if there's interest, in helping to create the little embedded curl of code that you can put onto your website to publicly share with your community what's happening, if that's of interest, all of that being optional. So I think that's where we'll wrap up right now. And we, of course, ran over. Chuck's contact information is going to be on this on the slides, and all of our contact information will be on the follow-up email that we send.
We look forward to maybe continuing the conversation. Certainly, if you have questions that we didn't answer, we weren't able to go into a lot of detail, but there's many aspects of what we do that I think can really bring value to whatever it is your goals are for your monitoring. So even if you're not quite sure, give us a call. We'd love to have a conversation.
Hey, Chuck, there's one more question. The question is, can the water level monitor reports be available online instead of by cell phone? Yes, they can be online. They can be a PDF. We can talk about however you would like to have that data available. And yes, we are available to meet with boards. We're happy to do it. If you would like us to jump in for 5 minutes or something, 10 minutes on a board meeting, just let us know, and we would be happy to be a part of that. We can call in, we can Zoom in, we can do any of the remote things. Great. Thank you. We'll wrap it up. Thank you all for coming. We really appreciate it. Take care and have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thank you all.